The morning sky of the city was bright and quiet when Keanu stepped out of his car. The air felt clean and soft, and the tall glass building in front of him reflected the early sunlight like a giant mirror. Everyone around him moved with purpose. People walked fast with files in their hands. Assistants whispered reminders. Security guards adjusted their positions. The meeting he was supposed to attend was one of the biggest business gatherings of the year. Dozens of important people waited inside. Cameras stood outside the entrance to capture his arrival. The pressure was real and heavy, yet Keanu walked calmly, as if he carried no weight at all. But just as he reached the wide steps that led to the main doors, his phone vibrated in his pocket. The sound was soft, but something about it pulled his attention instantly. Keanu stopped moving. His steps froze midway. He took out the phone and looked at the screen. It was a message from Sandra. Only 3 simple words appeared. "Are you free?" There was nothing dramatic in the text, no panic, no demand, no explanation. But Keanu felt something underneath the surface. Sandra never sent messages like this. She never asked for help without a reason. She never reached out on a morning like this, a morning where the world expected him to be somewhere important. The silence behind her message felt heavy. It made his heart beat a little faster. Keanu read the message again. His mind started to shift from the meeting to her voice in the back of his memory. He remembered the quiet way she laughed. He remembered the calm strength she carried. He remembered how she tried to handle everything alone, sometimes too alone. He sensed a hidden crack in her message. He sensed that she did not want to be alone this time. He sensed something unusual. And when Keanu sensed something, he listened. Around him, people expected him to keep walking into the building. Assistants watched him with confusion. They quietly waited for him to move again. The board members inside waited for him to arrive. The press outside shifted their cameras, hoping for a perfect shot. Everything and everyone around him pushed him toward the big meeting he was meant to attend, but Keanu stayed still. In that short moment, he felt a quiet pull inside his heart. It was not loud, it was not dramatic, but it was strong. He slowly placed his phone back in his pocket and let out a calm breath. He turned his head toward the driver who still stood near the car. The driver looked unsure. Keanu nodded once and said in a gentle but firm voice, "We are leaving." The driver blinked in surprise but obeyed. The security team became confused. The assistants rushed toward him. One of them said softly, "Sir, the meeting has already started. They are waiting for you." Keanu gave a slow, peaceful reply. "I know." He did not explain anything else. He did not justify his decision. He walked back to the car with steady steps. The assistants kept calling his name. They reminded him of the importance of the event. They reminded him of the people waiting. But Keanu only opened the car door and sat inside. The moment the door closed, the noise outside faded like a distant echo. As the car moved away from the building, Keanu felt a strange calmness. The city streets passed by quickly. People on sidewalks rushed to work. Buses moved through traffic with loud engines. But for Keanu, everything felt quiet inside the car. He replayed Sandra's message in his mind again and again. He tried to read the feeling behind those 3 simple words. He tried to understand why she sounded different today. She was a strong person. She hid her pain behind soft smiles, but something told him that today was not like any other day. The car drove through a slower part of the city. Small shops stood in a row. The roads were narrow. The sky seemed closer. Keanu checked his phone again. Sandra had sent a location. It was a quiet, empty park near an older neighborhood. It was not a place she normally visited. The choice of location added another layer of mystery. It deepened his worry. He felt a hint of tension in his chest, not fear, but an urgency to reach her before she felt more alone. When the car reached the park, the trees moved gently with the wind. The morning light fell across the empty benches. There were no children playing, no noise, no crowds, only quiet air and long shadows. Keanu stepped out and looked around with focused eyes. He saw Sandra standing beside a worn wooden bench. She was not sitting. She was not walking. She just stood there as if she was waiting for him to bring a part of peace she could not find on her own. Her face looked calm at first glance, but Keanu knew her too well. Her eyes carried a silence that did not belong to her usual self. He took slow steps toward her, and as he came closer, she tried to smile. But the smile did not reach her eyes. She opened her mouth slightly, as if she wanted to say something, but stopped. She looked down for a moment, then looked back up. Her voice came out soft and almost broken. "Thank you for coming." Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. The tone of her voice was not normal. It carried weight. It carried fear. It carried loneliness. He stood beside her, giving her space, giving her calm, giving her quiet strength without asking questions. He looked at her gently and said, "I am here now, tell me what is wrong." Sandra took a slow breath. Her hands shook slightly, although she tried to hide it. She said, "I did not want to be alone today." She looked around as if checking if anyone was watching them. Her eyes were alert and sensitive. She whispered again, "I felt strange this morning, something felt wrong." She swallowed hard before continuing. "I trusted the wrong people, and now I think they are trying to scare me." Keanu felt a wave of seriousness inside him. The world around them became silent. The tension wrapped the air. He realized why she called him. He realized why her voice sounded fragile. He realized that she had kept this inside for too long. And now she was standing here because she believed he would not let her face it alone. He stepped a little closer and spoke in a calm, steady tone. "You are safe with me. Tell me everything at your own pace. I am not leaving." His presence alone made her breathing softer. She closed her eyes for a moment and let the tension fall from her shoulders. She whispered, "Thank you," and in that quiet moment, Keanu knew he had made the right choice. He knew that the meeting he left behind meant nothing compared to Sandra's peace. He knew that she needed him more than any room full of important people. He chose humanity over importance. He chose presence over pressure. He chose kindness over duty. And this was only the beginning of the story. The first thing Keanu noticed was how Sandra kept looking over her shoulder. Her eyes moved to every corner of the quiet park as if the shadows held memories she did not want to face. The sunlight fell softly on the ground, but for her, the world felt darker than usual. Keanu watched her with calm focus. He understood that something heavy was locked deep inside her silence, something she had carried alone for longer than she should have. He felt it in the way her hands trembled. He felt it in the way she spoke slowly, as if each word cost her strength. He felt it in the way she avoided meeting his eyes for too long. The hook tightened even more when Sandra finally said in a soft voice, "I think someone has been following me." Keanu's expression stayed steady and calm, but inside his mind, everything sharpened. His senses woke up. His thoughts grew alert. He scanned the area without turning his head too quickly. The park had no crowd. Only a few birds flew past the trees. An old bench stood near a path. The silence was too deep for a city morning. Keanu felt something off in the air, something he could not describe yet. He shifted closer to Sandra, not enough to alarm her, but enough to make her feel protected. She kept her eyes on the ground as she spoke again. "It started 2 weeks ago," her voice cracked. "I ignored it at first because I thought I was overthinking." She rubbed her hands together slowly. "But yesterday, someone waited outside my building. It was the same person who stood behind me at the store last week." Her breathing grew slower. "And this morning I saw him near my car again." Keanu listened without interrupting. He gave her the time she needed. He never pushed her to speak faster. He never rushed her feelings. He only stood beside her with stillness that felt like safety. He waited until her words settled in the air before asking softly, "Did he do anything? Did he speak to you?" Sandra shook her head. "No, he just watched me like he knew I was scared and wanted me to stay scared." Keanu felt a small wave of anger rise inside him, not loud anger, but protective anger, the kind that made him more focused and more steady. He never tolerated fear being used against someone. He never tolerated anyone being made to feel small or unsafe. He took a slow breath and said, "You did the right thing by calling me." She nodded gently, but her eyes still searched the corners of the park. The fear inside her had grown from a whisper to a weight. It was clear she had spent too many nights thinking about it alone. Keanu felt the emotion behind her silence. He could see the exhaustion in her shoulders. She had slept with worry. She had woken with worry. She had walked with worry. And now she was finally sharing it because she could not carry it anymore. They started walking slowly along the quiet path. The trees above them created soft, moving shadows. Sandra walked with hesitant steps, like someone expecting danger behind every turn. Keanu stayed beside her with calm steps, matching her pace, making her feel less alone with each movement. He kept his voice soft when he spoke again. "Why did you not tell anyone before this morning?" She remained quiet for a moment before answering. "I thought I could handle it. I did not want to trouble anyone. I did not want to look weak." Keanu looked at her gently. "Asking for help is not weakness, it is courage." Sandra stopped walking. She turned her face to him. Her eyes looked tired but grateful. "You always say the right thing," she whispered. Keanu shook his head slightly. "I just say the truth." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by soft wind and silence. Then Sandra suddenly looked toward the far end of the park. Her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened. Keanu followed her gaze with calm precision. Across the narrow road near a metal fence, a man stood still. He was far enough to avoid attention, but close enough to be seen clearly. His eyes were locked on Sandra. He did not blink. He did not smile. He did not pretend to be busy. He only stared. Keanu felt the tension shift immediately. Sandra took a small step back without thinking. Her hands froze by her sides. "That is him," she whispered with fear that trembled through her entire body. Keanu did not move fast. He moved steady. He moved with silent strength. He stepped slightly in front of Sandra, forming a barrier between her and the man. His body remained relaxed but firm. His shoulders stayed loose but ready. His eyes locked onto the man with a calm intensity that carried warning without a single spoken word. The man hesitated. He had expected Sandra alone. He had not expected Keanu Reeves standing protectively in front of her. The man took one slow step forward, testing the distance. Keanu did not step back. He stayed rooted with complete stillness. His eyes narrowed slightly, not with aggression, but with a clear message that could be felt from across the street. It said, "Not today," and not with her. The man stopped. The silence grew colder. For a long second, it looked like the situation might escalate. Sandra held her breath. Keanu kept his focus sharp and unbroken. Then the man looked away, turned around, and walked off into the crowd, disappearing behind the moving line of cars and people. Sandra let out a shaky sigh. Her entire body relaxed at once, as if she had been holding tension for hours. Keanu turned toward her and spoke in a low, steady tone. "He will not come near you again, not while I am here." Tears slowly filled her eyes, not from fear now, but from relief. She whispered, "I was really scared, and you still came even though you had the biggest meeting today." Keanu shook his head slowly. "A meeting can wait, you cannot." They walked back toward the bench and sat down. The sunlight warmed the wooden surface. Sandra breathed quietly. Her voice carried calmness now. "You always show up with kindness even when you do not have to." Keanu looked at her with a gentle expression. "You matter, your peace matters, your safety matters." Sandra's eyes softened. The fear inside her slowly melted, replaced by a quiet sense of comfort she had not felt in days. She whispered, "Thank you for choosing to be here," and Keanu replied softly, "I would choose this again every single time." The suspense had only begun, but for the first time that morning, Sandra felt safe. The moment Sandra felt safe enough to breathe again, Keanu noticed something else in her eyes. Fear was still there, but behind it lived another feeling she had not shared yet. Something heavier, something older, something she had been hiding long before today. He could read it in the way she held her hands together. He could read it in the way her voice softened whenever she tried to explain what was happening. There was a deeper story she had not told him. Something that connected to the man who had been watching her. Something that connected to the silence she carried. The hook tightened the moment she whispered, "Keanu, there is something I never told you." He turned slightly to face her. The breeze moved the leaves above them like soft whispers. Sunlight filtered through the branches and fell gently across Sandra's face, but her expression stayed serious. She hesitated for a long moment. Her throat moved slowly as she swallowed. Keanu kept his voice steady and warm as he said, "You can tell me anything." She closed her eyes for a second and then opened them. "This did not start 2 weeks ago," she said quietly. Keanu stayed silent and listened. He knew she needed space to speak. "It started months ago, but I ignored it because I thought it would stop." A long breath escaped her like a secret leaving her chest. She continued in a low voice. "I received a message from an unknown number months back. It said they knew where I lived. They said they knew my routines. They said they could reach me any time." Keanu's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his expression composed. "You should have told someone," he said softly. Sandra shook her head. "I did not want anyone to worry. I convinced myself it was just a random person. But then someone started leaving notes on my car, strange, short notes, not threatening, but unsettling, like they wanted me to feel watched." Keanu leaned a little closer without rushing her. "What did the notes say?" She looked down at her hands. "One note said, 'I see your kindness.' Another said, 'You trust too quickly.' Another said, 'You walk alone too often.'" She took a deep, shaky breath. "Every note was written to make me doubt myself, to make me feel exposed, but never enough to call it a crime." Keanu understood the pattern. This was not just watching. This was psychological pressure. Fear created slowly. Fear sharpened by silence. He spoke gently. "This person knows exactly what they are doing. They want you to feel vulnerable." Sandra nodded slowly. "I think they wanted me to break down quietly. They wanted me to panic without anyone noticing." Keanu's voice remained calm, but his eyes grew more serious. "And you have been carrying all this alone?" She lowered her head. Yes, Keanu felt a deep ache inside him. Not anger at her for hiding it, but sadness that she thought she had to. Sadness that she tried to protect everyone but herself. He placed his hand near hers, not touching but close enough to offer comfort. You are not alone anymore. You do not have to fight this by yourself. She lifted her eyes and looked at him with a fragile expression. I knew you would understand, but I did not want to ruin your day. I did not want to pull you away from your work. Keanu shook his head gently. My work will always wait. People matter more than schedules, especially people who trust me. Her lips trembled slightly, but this time from emotion and not fear. She whispered, you choosing to come today means more than you know. Before Keanu could speak, he noticed something on the ground near the path. A small, thin piece of paper, almost blending with the dry leaves. It was folded once as if dropped in a hurry. His instincts sharpened. He stood up slowly and walked toward it. Sandra watched him nervously. Keanu picked up the note and opened it carefully. Inside the paper, there were only 4 words written in small, uneven letters. I know. She called. Keanu's breath slowed, but his mind grew sharper than blades. He turned the paper over. Nothing else. The message was simple but powerful. It told him one thing clearly. The person watching Sandra had been closer than they realized. Maybe even close enough to see her meet Keanu. Close enough to know she trusted him. Close enough to follow her movements step by step. Sandra stood up with fear rising again. Keanu, please tell me that is not. He walked back to her slowly and held the note in his hand. We will handle this together. He said gently, her eyes filled with fear again. Does this mean he was here before we arrived? Keanu nodded softly but calmly. Most likely yes. She stepped back in shock. That means he followed me this morning. He knew where I was going. Keanu took a slow, steady breath. He could feel her fear growing again, and he did not want that. He spoke in a calm voice that felt like a shield. He knows you are not alone now. That changes everything. Sandra covered her mouth with her hand as if trying to stop her fear from spilling out. Why would someone do this? Why would someone want to scare me like this? Keanu looked at her with deep understanding. Some people fear kindness because it reminds them of what they cannot be. Some people try to break gentle souls because they know they cannot break strong ones. She nodded slowly as his words settled in her heart. But you are here now, she whispered. I am here, he replied softly, and I am not going anywhere. Keanu looked around the park again with sharp focus. He studied every corner. He studied the street. He studied the shadows. His senses searched for any movement, any shape, any sign, but the park remained still. The danger had stepped back for now but had not disappeared, and Keanu knew it. He turned to Sandra with a warm, steady expression. We are leaving this park. We will go somewhere safer. Sandra nodded immediately. She felt a sense of comfort in every word he spoke. They walked toward the car together. Every step she took felt lighter because he walked beside her. She no longer felt like she had to look behind her every few seconds. She no longer felt like she had to hide her fear in silence. As they reached the car, Keanu opened the door for her. She paused for a moment, touched by his gentle respect even in the middle of danger. She whispered in a soft voice, you always make me feel protected. Keanu gave her a small, calm smile. I will always protect you. They both sat inside the car. The doors closed softly. The engine started. The outside world faded again, but something had changed. Now they had a clue. Now they had a warning. Now they had a reason to stay together. What neither of them knew yet was that the real twist was still waiting ahead. The story had only begun to reveal its truth, and the danger had not finished its game. The car moved through the quiet streets while Sandra kept her eyes on the passing buildings. Even though she sat beside Keanu, the weight of the note still pressed against her heart. The message felt like a shadow following her. She took a slow breath and tried to calm her racing thoughts. Keanu glanced at her with gentle focus. He could see the fear she tried to hide again. He spoke softly. You are safe here. No one can reach you while you are with me. His words settled her breathing. The calm tone in his voice worked like a blanket over her nerves. She leaned back in the seat and closed her eyes for a moment. She felt her heartbeat slow down. She felt her shoulders relax. She felt the tension loosen bit by bit. Keanu kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was alert. He replayed every detail Sandra had told him. He replayed the man's stare in the park. He replayed the note he found on the ground. The pieces formed a picture that made him more protective, more aware. He knew the person watching Sandra was not acting randomly. This was planned. This was patient. This was someone who wanted control through fear. And Keanu refused to let that happen. They arrived at a small, safe cafe with big windows and a quiet side entrance. It was a place Keanu visited when he needed silence. No crowds, no cameras, no noise. He knew she needed peace. They sat at a corner table where sunlight gently touched the wood. Sandra wrapped her hands around a warm cup even though she barely drank from it. Her voice was soft when she finally spoke again. I kept pretending I was fine, but every day it got harder to breathe, she whispered. Keanu nodded with understanding. Fear grows fastest in silence, he said quietly. You should never have carried this alone. She looked at him with tired eyes. I did not want anyone to think I was weak or dramatic. Keanu leaned forward slightly. Fear does not make you weak, it makes you human, and sharing fear makes you stronger, not smaller. Her eyes softened. A tiny breath escaped her lips. She whispered, that is why I called you today. I knew if I reached out to you I would not be judged. Keanu's gaze stayed warm. You will never be judged by me, never. Before she could reply, Keanu noticed something through the window. A reflection, a movement. It was faint but enough to catch his attention. A man across the street stood behind a tall tree pretending to check his phone, but his head tilted just slightly in Sandra's direction. The posture was too still to be natural, too focused, too intentional. Keanu felt a shift inside him. His voice stayed calm as he whispered to Sandra, do not look outside, keep your eyes on me. She froze. Is he here? She whispered. Keanu nodded slightly. Someone is watching from across the street, but you are safe. Sandra took a shaky breath but followed his instruction. She kept her eyes locked on Keanu. She trusted his calm more than anything in that moment. He slowly stood up. Stay here behind the glass, the light will hide you. I am just going to check something. Her voice broke. Please be careful. He gave her a soft, reassuring look. I always am. Keanu stepped outside with slow, measured steps. The man across the street looked up. The moment he saw Keanu walk toward him, he turned and rushed away between two buildings. Keanu followed his controlled, calm pace, but the man disappeared into a narrow alley. Keanu stopped at the entrance. The alley was empty. The man had vanished again. Keanu returned to the cafe. Sandra stood near the door waiting for him with worry in her eyes. Did you see him? She asked. Keanu nodded. Yes, and he ran the moment he saw me. Her voice trembled. Why is he doing this? Why me? Keanu placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Because he thinks you are easy to scare, but he is wrong. You are stronger than you know, and now he has to face me, not just you. She exhaled slowly. The fear inside her started to shift into courage. Not because the danger was gone, but because she felt protected. She felt valued. She felt seen. Keanu guided her outside carefully and stood close enough to shield her from any gaze. As they walked toward the car, he whispered, this ends today. I will not let fear live in your life another minute. Sandra looked at him with deep respect. Thank you for standing with me. Keanu gave her a gentle, calm smile. I will always stand with you. But neither of them knew the real twist was only one step away, and it would change everything again. The drive from the cafe was silent but heavy with emotion. Sandra sat close to the window, watching the passing streets with quiet fear mixed with new courage. She felt safer with Keanu beside her, yet the image of the man running away refused to leave her mind. Every shadow looked sharper. Every corner felt deeper. She kept her hands together tightly, as if holding her strength in place. Keanu noticed her trembling fingers and spoke gently. Breathe slowly, you are not alone anymore. His calm voice made her chest loosen a little. She whispered, I trust you, Keanu, but I keep wondering when this will finally end. He looked ahead with steady eyes. It ends when he realizes he cannot control you, he cannot control your fear, and he cannot get past me. She nodded softly. His confidence wrapped around her like a shield. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes for a moment. For the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe without shaking. Keanu drove them to a quiet, private place. He knew well, a small, safe building where they could think clearly without eyes watching from outside. The area was calm. No crowds, no noise, no strangers. When they stepped out of the car, Sandra took a slow breath that felt lighter than before. Keanu walked beside her with protective calmness. Inside the small room, Keanu asked her gently, tell me everything from the start, every detail matters. Sandra hesitated at first, but then she began speaking. She told him about the first strange message months ago. She told him about the notes left on her car. She told him about the footsteps she heard behind her some nights. She told him about the way she kept pretending it was nothing because she did not want anyone to worry. She told him how every day the fear grew until this morning it felt like a storm inside her. Her voice cracked as she whispered, I thought if I stayed quiet it would go away. Keanu shook his head softly. Fear grows in silence. You deserve peace, not suffering. Tears slowly filled her eyes. She covered her mouth with her hand, but the emotions escaped anyway. I just did not want to ruin anyone's day, especially yours. Keanu stepped closer and spoke with soft strength. No meeting, no event, no schedule will ever be more important than your safety. Your feelings matter. Sandra lowered her hand. Her voice broke again. You came for me when I was scared, afraid, and alone. You left everything because of me. Keanu shook his head. I came because you needed someone to stand beside you, and I would do it again without thinking. Before Sandra could reply, Keanu's phone buzzed. He looked at it for a moment with a serious expression. Sandra watched him anxiously. Is something wrong? She asked in a shaky voice. Keanu took a slow breath. Security sent me something. They checked the area near the park. Sandra's heart tightened. What did they find? Keanu showed her the screen. It was an image of the man from earlier, but taken from behind a pole. The angle was sharp enough to reveal his face partly. The security message under the picture read, "The same person has been seen in 3 locations, following the same path as Sandra." Sandra covered her mouth again, tears forming in her eyes. He really was following me all this time. Keanu nodded gently but firmly. Yes, but now we know who he is, and now he knows he is not dealing with you alone. Sandra took a trembling breath. What do we do now? Keanu looked at her with calm certainty. Now we protect you fully. Now we end this fear. Now we make sure he never comes near you again. She felt a wave of relief and emotion wash over her. Thank you, Keanu. I do not know what I would have done without you today. He gave her a warm, gentle look. You do not have to imagine that, because you are not alone, not now, not ever. Sandra blinked, slowly letting his words settle deep inside her. With him beside her, the fear felt smaller. The world felt softer. She felt seen and respected in a way she had not felt in a long time. But neither of them knew that one last moment, one final twist was waiting just outside the quiet room, and it would decide everything. The room felt quiet and safe, but Keanu's senses stayed alert. He knew the man following Sandra was not acting randomly. People who wanted control did not walk away easily. They pushed until they met something stronger than their fear. Sandra breathed slowly beside him, her shoulders softer now. She finally felt protected, finally felt heard, finally felt like the weight she carried alone had a place to rest. But even with that comfort, Keanu could feel the tension of unfinished danger in the air. Then a soft sound echoed from the hallway. A footstep, calm but slow. Sandra froze, her hand tightened around the edge of the table. Keanu raised his hand gently, signaling her to stay behind him. He stepped toward the door with quiet, steady steps. There were no voices, no rush, just that single soft movement outside. Keanu opened the door slightly and looked out into the hall. A security officer stood there with a tablet in his hand. He nodded respectfully. We have information, he said quietly. Keanu nodded and stepped back to let him inside. Sandra watched with anxious eyes. The officer placed the tablet on the table. We reviewed more cameras from the last 12 hours. The man followed Sandra from her building to the park, and then to the cafe. Sandra swallowed hard. So he was everywhere I went, the officer nodded. Yes, but he is no longer outside. He left the area. Keanu studied the images on the screen. Each photo showed the man standing in different corners of the street, close enough to see her but far enough to avoid getting caught. It was a pattern of intimidation, slow pressure, silent fear. Keanu took a long, calm breath before asking, "Who is he?" The officer hesitated. He worked near Sandra's building last year. He was removed for inappropriate behavior after he tried to get close to several people. Sandra's eyes filled with shock. I never even noticed him, the officer nodded. He became fixated on certain people without their knowledge. You were one of them. Sandra looked down with trembling hands. So I was being watched without knowing. Keanu sat beside her and spoke gently. This is not your fault. No one expects to be watched in silence. The officer continued. We have already sent his picture and full information to the local police. They will handle the rest. He will not come near you again. Sandra exhaled slowly, relief mixing with exhaustion. Thank you so much. The officer left the room quietly. The door closed with a soft click. The silence returned, but this time it carried peace instead of fear. Sandra turned toward Keanu with eyes filled with emotion. You missed the biggest meeting of your year for this, she whispered. Keanu shook his head slowly. I did not miss anything. I chose something more important. She looked at him with a fragile mix of gratitude and disbelief. You showed up even when I did not explain anything, even when I was scared and confused, even when I could not find the right words. Keanu responded with a calm, soft voice. You did not need perfect words. Your message told me enough. You needed someone, and that is all that matters. Sandra let a tear slide down her cheek, not from fear this time, but from the simple kindness in his tone. I do not know how to thank you, Keanu. You protected me. You listened to me. You believed me when I doubted myself. You made me feel safe again. Keanu looked at her with gentle sincerity. I did what any person should do when someone they care about is hurting. I showed up. She placed her hand lightly on his arm. But you showed up even when the world expected you somewhere else. That means more than you think. He smiled softly, the kind of smile that felt calm and steady. Meetings can wait, but people cannot. When someone is scared or alone, the right thing to do is to be there for them. Sandra wiped her tears and breathed deeply. The fear inside her finally loosened. It did not control her anymore. She felt lighter. She felt stronger. She felt respected. She whispered, "You helped me find my strength again." Keanu nodded. "You always had strength. I only reminded you of it." They walked out of the building together. The sun had risen higher in the sky. Warm light touched the street gently. Sandra stepped outside with a feeling she had not felt in a long time. Peace, calm, safety. Keanu walked beside her with quiet presence, the same calmness that protected her all morning. Reporters nearby tried to ask him questions about the meeting he missed, but Keanu simply said one clear line as he continued walking beside Sandra. "I was exactly where I needed to be." The world heard those words, and they felt the power behind them, not the power of fame, not the power of importance, but the power of kindness and respect. Sandra looked at him with soft, grateful eyes. "Thank you for choosing me today," Keanu answered quietly. "I would choose you again every time." The danger was gone, the fear had ended, the story had reached peace, and Sandra walked forward with her strength returned, and Keanu at her side, protecting her, respecting her, and reminding her that she mattered.